I opened my eyes, and the acrid smell of chalk dust and floor wax rushed into my nostrils. The huge countdown board on the blackboard clearly read, 90 days until the Gaokao. I was sitting in my original seat in Class 3, Grade 12. Across the aisle, Elena bent over, pressed to my desk, with her signature shy smile on her face. Her gaze fixed hungrily on the second layer of my drawer, where, every morning, there used to be a customized insulated lunchbox. You brought extra lunch today, right? Elena's voice was soft, slightly hoarse. She touched her stomach with a practiced, awkward gesture. My aunt didn't leave breakfast again today. My stomach hurts. In the previous life, every word of this sentence would make me hurry out the 3-tier stainless steel lunchbox, packed with roast beef, steamed shrimp, and fresh organic fruit, all prepared by our family chef. I brought her meals for 2 whole years, always thinking she was a hard-luck poor girl. And in return, she drank all my blood, accused me of insulting her dignity with money, forged evidence that I cheated on exams, and ultimately pushed my life off the cliff. I looked at her face, noticing the faint gloss of lip gloss on her lips. I reached into my bag, pulled out a slice of the cheapest dried toast wrapped in a transparent plastic bag, and placed it at the corner of my desk. I didn't bring lunch today. My voice was calm, without a ripple. As I unscrewed the cap of my fountain pen and began to write formulas in a brand new notebook, just this. Elena's eyes were fixed on that piece of dried toast. A moment later, the gentle, helpless expression on her face twisted. She stepped back, her eyelashes trembling as if she had just been slapped. You didn't bring extra food? Elena lowered her head, voice barely above a whisper, with a tremor, echoing through the quiet classroom. Did I do something wrong? Is it because I still haven't repaid you for last week's fruit money? I told you, as soon as I get the scholarship I'll pay you back every cent. You don't have to treat me like this in front of everyone. Several classmates in the front rows turned their heads. The class monitor Chloe, seated in the first 2 rows, immediately put down her pen and stepped forward, her gaze sharp as she looked at me. What's going on? Chloe stood beside Elena, reaching out to shoulder her. Elena has severe hypoglycemia. You know that. You've been bringing her lunch every day. Why didn't you bring it today? If she faints because of the morning's practice test, can you bear the impact on her grades? I don't owe anyone lunch, I said, not even lifting my head, the blue ink pen gliding smoothly over the paper. My parents' money is for me to eat, not for her. So what? It's just one lunch. Your family is so rich, isn't it? Chloe folded her arms and scoffed. Elena's family lives on welfare. One meal can ruin you? You used to pretend to be generous. Then near the practice exams you suddenly pull this stunt, to mess with people's minds, right? Elena squeezed her eyes shut tightly, a tear slipping down her cheek. Chloe, stop scolding her. It's all my fault. I'm just too poor. I shouldn't rely on others' charity. I paused, letting the pen click loudly as the metal cap snapped shut within the quiet classroom. I stood up, walked around the chair, and went straight to Elena's desk. Before she and Chloe could react, I grabbed the heavy canvas backpack hanging by her chair's side and tipped the bag onto her desk. Hey! What are you doing? Elena screamed, lunging forward to snatch the bag back. It was already too late. The contents of the school bag spread towering over more than half the desk, even falling onto the floor. A heavy brass fountain pen with a gilded nib dropped directly by Chloe's shoe. Next rolled out 3 Japanese imported pastel fluorescent highlighters, each worth enough to cover a week's normal meals in the school cafeteria, and a limited edition leather notebook with a silver embossed logo. From the side pocket of the bag, a tube of pink French luxury lipstick rolled out and finally stopped beneath the front podium. The entire classroom fell abruptly silent. A brass fountain pen worth $200, I said, pointing at the desk, my voice clear and measured to make sure every student in the first 3 rows could hear every word. A limited edition stationery item imported directly from Tokyo. A $50 lipstick. And then you tell everyone you don't even have $3 to buy a hot meal in the school cafeteria? Elena's face turned deathly pale in an instant. Her hand hung in midair, just a few centimeters from those scattered valuable items. That's not mine. Elena stepped back unsteadily, her voice sharp with panic. That was given to me by a friend. That's fake. It's counterfeit. The pen's clip is engraved with a registration serial number. I picked up the heavy metal pen and held it under the classroom's fluorescent light for display. Our school's official stationery shop only received 3 of these last month, and each purchase requires student ID information to be entered. Want me to ask the store manager to pull up the system logs now? Elena's lips trembled violently. She clutched the edge of the desk so tightly that her knuckles turned white from the exertion. She looked around, but instead of the previously discontent looks from my classmates, everyone was now scrutinizing her scattered personal items with extremely sharp and suspicious gazes. Chloe stood stiffly beside her, gritting her teeth, unable to utter a single word to defend Elena. You actually hate my lunch, don't you, Elena? I looked straight into the eyes widened with fear, my voice cold and composed. You just like someone paying for your life so you can spend all your money on luxury goods. I turned back to my seat, picked up the pen again, and sat down. Under the piercing scrutiny of the entire class, Elena collapsed onto her chair, her hands trembling uncontrollably as she tried to stuff those expensive items back into the bag. The entire morning, the atmosphere in Class 3 of senior year, Class 3, was suffocatingly oppressive. During every break, Elena sat motionless in her seat, shoulders hunched, staring fixedly at the wooden grain on the desk. And class monitor Chloe used the gaps between 3 and 4 classes to whisper fiercely in the back row with the other 2 class committee members. When the lunch bell rang, I didn't head to the cafeteria immediately. I stood up and casually slid a folder into my canvas tote. Before I could reach the front door, Chloe stepped forward to block my way, wrapping her arms tightly across her chest to stop me at the door. Behind her stood Elena, one hand pressed tightly against her chest, her face pale and delicate, as if she might faint at any moment. Stop, Chloe ordered sternly, her voice so loud that all the classmates who were sorting through their books paused what they were doing. Do you think you can suddenly hurl some ridiculous accusations out of thin air? Shame Elena with a few expensive pens, and just walk away like this? You owe her, and the whole class, an explanation. I stop in my tracks, my expression calm and indifferent as I look at Chloe. Explain what? Explain your defamation. Chloe stepped forward half a step, her tone righteous and sharp. Elena told me during the break. Those expensive stationery were given by the neighbor's family to thank her for taking care of their sick grandmother after school. She didn't buy them at all. She didn't spend a single cent herself. Elena let out a faint, pitiful sob and leaned heavily against the doorframe. Just now, in front of everyone, I was so embarrassed I couldn't speak. I don't want everyone to think I survive on the kindness of neighbors. But you made everyone look at me as if I were a liar and a thief. Whispers rose in the classroom. A few classmates who had harbored doubts began to turn their gazes back to me, muttering softly. You used your family's wealth to make a rash judgment and ruin her reputation before the mock exams, Chloe said, chin raised, stepping closer. As class monitor, I demand that you apologize to Elena in front of the whole class now. Otherwise, I'll go straight to the grade level principal, Mr. Vance, to deduct your conduct points for bullying. Bullying? I whispered with a light laugh. Chloe, if you want to summon Mr. Vance, you don't even need to walk to his office. He's already on the way. Chloe's brow furrowed, and a hint of wavering confidence appeared in her eyes. What are you talking about? I unzipped the zipper of the canvas bag, take out 2 pages printed directly from the school management system, neatly stapled, and a laminated student ID card. If you were busy making up excuses during the 3rd period, I submitted a formal inquiry to the school cafeteria administration and the Student Financial Aid Center, I said, holding the documents high enough for the surrounding students to clearly see. I tapped the first page lightly with my index finger. This is Elena's campus card transaction record for the past 4 weeks. Every student who receives municipal subsidies is issued a subsidized card, recording every purchase on campus. My voice steady and precise, with no emotion. Last semester, when I brought her 3 meals every day, her subsidized meal cards record at the dining window was 0. So what? Chloe shouted, although her eyes kept darting anxiously to the printed pages. She didn't have to because you brought her lunch. What does this prove? Let me finish. Chloe, I said calmly, interrupting her. Look at the second column. The subsidy card is only allowed to be used in two places: the basic cafeteria and the campus bookstore. Although Elena spent nothing at the cafeteria, her card every Friday afternoon hits the daily maximum at the campus bookstore. I turned to the second page. These are the details linked directly to her student ID in the bookstore system. She's not buying textbooks, nor practice exam papers. She's purchasing imported art markers, designer notebook covers, and high-end brass fountain pens, the very items that spilled out of her backpack this morning. The corridor instantly fell into deathly silence. The students gathered at the doorway moved closer, peering over my shoulder at the records written in black and white on the white paper. Elena's face shifted from pale to sickly yellow. She stepped back, hands trembling violently, and the water bottle in her hand clinked to the ground. You didn't receive second-hand charity from the neighbors. I looked straight into Elena's terrified eyes. She took government relief meant to sustain basic nutrition, because I paid for her meals, completely bypassing the cafeteria, and turned every penny of the national funding into luxurious stationery to show off. That's a lie. The system must be wrong. Elena shouted hoarsely, her voice breaking due to hysteria. You forged these papers. Forgery? A heavy, stern voice cut through from behind the crowd. The gawking students immediately parted, making way for a path. Mr. Vance, the grade-level discipline supervisor, clutched a thick leather folder under his arm and walked over with a pale face. Nobody forged anything, Mr. Vance said coldly, stopping at the classroom door. He held up another copy of the same document. The funding office received an official audit warning 15 minutes ago. I personally cross-checked these transaction logs with the campus network administrator. Mr. Vance's sharp, icy gaze swept over Elena. This time, she really looked like she was about to faint. Elena, Mr. Vance spoke with absolute sternness. The municipal student aid you received requires strict adherence to the funding regulations. Cashing out the meal allowance for non-essential luxury goods constitutes a direct violation of the student aid charter and fraud against the university's funding committee. Mr. Vance, please. I can explain. Elena frenziedly reached out, trying to grab the teacher's sleeve. Go to the disciplinary office to explain. Mr. Vance cut her off without a hint of mercy. Until the full review results are out, your funding eligibility will be suspended immediately. In addition, the Board of Trustees will also re-examine your eligibility for the upcoming Provincial Excellence Scholarship. Elena slid down the wall and collapsed onto the cold floor tiles, hugging her head tightly as she fell into complete panic. I slowly turned my head to look at Chloe, and she was stiff as a board, her complexion paling to almost nothing, and the hand resting at her side trembled uncontrollably. Chloe, I whispered, the sound clear in the quiet corridor. As class monitor, are you prepared to report this fraud to Mr. Vance, or continue demanding that I apologize? Chloe opened her mouth, but not a single note escaped. Under the sharp accusations of our classmates, she lowered her head and slowly stepped backward, one step at a time. I stepped over Elena's water bottle on the floor, adjusted the canvas bag over my shoulder, and made my way around them. The day after the notice of the qualification review for school funding eligibility was issued, the atmosphere in the class changed. The students' eyes toward Elena no longer carried sympathy, but were filled with indifference and estrangement. But Chloe clearly was not willing to admit defeat. As class monitor, she still held many internal administrative powers of the class. On Wednesday during early morning self-study, Chloe walked onto the podium with a thick stack of forms. Students, the final registration forms for the National High School Physics Competition must be submitted before the end of today. Chloe tapped the podium, her voice high-pitched, her gaze unintentionally drifting toward me. This competition not only relates to bonus eligibility for independent admission to the college entrance examination, but the spots are also very limited. Our class has only 2 slots. She paused, picking up 2 forms stamped with the red seal of the Academic Affairs Office. Based on last semester's final grades and the qualifying round rankings, these 2 slots originally belonged to me and the protagonist. But I have received an anonymous report alleging that the protagonist engaged in improper conduct during last week's physics experimental assessment. The Academic Affairs Office is currently investigating. In the interest of fairness, until the investigation concludes, I suggest temporarily freezing the protagonist's eligibility and letting Elena Who is ranked third? Fill in. As soon as she finished speaking, Elena, sitting in the back row, immediately lowered her head slightly, hands clasped at her abdomen, showing a timid and compliant appearance as if submitting to arrangements. The whole class was in an uproar. Everyone knew that the competition slots were crucial for me, and the so-called experimental assessment violation was completely unfounded. I did not rise to refute as I had in the past, not even frowning. I just sat quietly, casually pulling a black tablet PC from the drawer and pressing play. Chloe, I slowly lifted my head, my voice quiet but clear throughout the classroom. Are you sure the Academic Affairs Office is investigating me, rather than investigating you? Chloe's face changed, but she quickly recovered her composure and sneered. What are you talking about? The forms were sent to me directly by the Academic Affairs Office, and the accusation letter was handed to me directly. I have the right to perform a temporary check on the eligibility of the candidates. Is that so? I stood up, carrying the tablet toward the podium. Then tell me, what did you and Elena do at the door of the Academic Affairs Office archive room during the half hour after school yesterday at 5:30 p.m? Chloe's breath seized for a moment, her fingers instinctively tightening around the forms in her hand. I turned the tablet screen toward the whole class. On the screen was a clearly playing CCTV clip. It had been captured yesterday by the new corridor surveillance cameras installed by the school in the Academic Affairs building. In the footage, Chloe used a spare key to open the archive room door, while Elena stood at the corner of the corridor looking on. A few minutes later, Chloe emerged holding a document, quickly making changes with a pen on it, then stuffing the document back into the archive room drawer. To prevent fraud in the competition registration process, the school last week specifically installed high-definition cameras with no blind spots in all corridors of the Academic Affairs building. I stepped onto the podium, stopping in front of Chloe. You thought you were altering my physics lab grade transcript, but you didn't realize that the Academic Affairs Office had already completed electronic archiving the day before yesterday. What you altered was only a printed hard copy. Chloe's face went completely pale, cold sweat seeping from the sides of her hairline. She frantically reached out to try to turn off the tablet, but I directly grasped her wrist. You took the class monitor's key without authorization to sneak into the archive room and tamper with a fellow student's official record, all just to force the competition slot onto someone who has just lost funding for scholarship due to an integrity crisis. My gaze swept over Chloe like a blade, then fell to Elena trembling below the podium. Chloe, this is a serious violation of discipline, directly crossing the school's red line. No, this isn't me. Elena told me to do this. Overwhelmed by fear, Chloe completely lost her mind. She forcefully shoved Elena behind her and cried out. It's you said that as long as I could get extra points in the competition, she could salvage her scholarship image. She gave me the key. Chloe, you're lying through your teeth. Elena was pushed to the ground, screaming back. Obviously you hate the protagonist yourself, and you wanted her to miss the college entrance extra points on purpose, so you dragged me along. The whole class stared in astonishment at two people who usually called each other sisters, tearing at each other on the podium like mad dogs. At that moment, the door to the classroom was suddenly pushed open. The director of the Academic Affairs Office, accompanied by two security guards, stood at the door with a grim expression. Chloe, Elena, the director's voice rumbled as heavy as thunder. The monitoring log in the archives room has automatically triggered an alarm. You two, follow me to the principal's office immediately. The director stepped forward and confiscated Chloe's registration form on the spot, announcing, after verification by the Academic Affairs Office, class monitor Chloe is dismissed from her position for serious violations of authority and tampering with official documents. All honors and competition qualifications are cancelled. Elena is found to have participated in the conspiracy. She will receive a major demerit. And all competition qualifications for this semester are cancelled. Chloe collapsed to the floor, eyes reddened as she looked at the director, then turned to me, filled with despair and remorse. I looked down from above at them being led away by the guards, then reached out to reclaim my own competition registration form, and clearly signed my name on it. Chloe, after being stripped of her class monitor position and losing her eligibility for the competition, became obscure and silent. Elena carried the heavy punishment, and the hope of turning things around through the competition had completely collapsed. Yet the two of them did not stop there. Instead, they twisted all their resentment into a venomous cord. Friday afternoon is the school-wide cleaning session. As usual, Class 3 of the 3rd grade is responsible for cleaning the high-level physics laboratory in the science building. In the lab, a batch of high-precision electron microscopes that the school had just acquired were displayed. Each unit costs tens of thousands of dollars, and they are key protected items among the school's property. As the cleaning was almost finished, Chloe suddenly clapped her hands and loudly announced, "Everyone put the cleaning tools back in their places, check your personal belongings, and get ready to leave for the day. Also, today I'll hand the lab keys back to the academic affairs office. Make sure to check your bags yourselves. Don't take any equipment out." I was standing by a windowed lab bench, organizing rags. Elena, carrying a trash can, brushed past me with a wide swing of her arm, making my table edge tremble. "Sorry," Elena said softly, bowing her head as she hurried past me, a trace of an ill-disguised eerie gleam flashing in her eyes. I gave her back as little as a glance, ignoring her. After she was gone, I looked down at the black canvas bag hanging on the back of my chair. The zipper was pulled back a short distance, and the once light bag now seemed somewhat heavy. I reached out and touched the bottom of the bag. It felt cold and heavy, a hard metal shell. That was the core lens assembly of the most valuable imported microscope in the lab. In the previous life, after the cleaning, this lens was found in my bag on the spot. Chloe and Elena swore that I harbored ill intentions and tried to steal school property, which led to me being given a major demerit and nearly expelled. A cold smile curved my lips. I didn't panic, nor did I reach to pull the lens out. I used my body posture and the curtain to quietly pull the lens from my bag and quickly slip it into the black plastic trash bag under the desk, which was filled with discarded lab paper towels. 5 minutes later, the cleaning ended, and the class packed up their bags and prepared to leave the lab. "Wait a minute!" Chloe suddenly stood at the lab door, slammed the door shut, and shouted in a serious tone, "Everyone, don't leave yet. I just checked the lab equipment and found that the core lens of the high-precision microscope on table 1 is missing." The lab fell into an uproar. "That's equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars. If it's lost, our whole class will be punished." Someone cried out, "Everyone, please don't panic." Elena stepped forward, her voice carrying a pretended concern, her gaze directly on me. "The lens is so large it couldn't have traveled far. To prove everyone's innocence, why don't we all open our bags and check each other's? That would be fair to everyone." "Why should we check our bags?" a classmate muttered in dissatisfaction. "This is for everyone's sake." Chloe interrupted the classmates with righteous zeal, directly coming to my desk. "You, the main character, were the last to touch the table 1 experiment desk, so why don't you start? Open your bag yourself and let everyone see." The whole class eyes instantly fixed on me. Elena stood behind the crowd, her eyes fixed on my black bag, a cruel sneer barely hidden at the corner of her mouth. I made no resistance, obediently unzipped the bag and laid out its contents one by one on the table. Textbooks, exercise books, a water cup, a pencil case. The bottom of the bag was empty. Except for a few sheets of paper, the bag contained nothing else. Chloe's smile instantly froze on her face, and Elena's eyes widened as she instinctively took a step forward. "Impossible! This is impossible! How is that possible?" I picked up the empty backpack, inverted it, and held it up to the whole class. "Chloe, Elena, you keep saying the camera disappeared, and it kept circling around my backpack for several laps. So why is there nothing in my backpack? You must have hidden it somewhere else." Chloe cried unwillingly, turning to Elena. "Didn't you just see her? What did I see?" "I didn't see anything." Elena realized Chloe almost betrayed herself, hurriedly interrupting with a loud shout, cold sweat streaming down her forehead. "Since my backpack has been checked, to be fair, shouldn't we also check the person who initiated the search?" I spoke calmly, my eyes like a hawk sweeping over Chloe and Elena. "What right do we have to be checked? The camera wasn't us who took it," Chloe screeched, clutching her own backpack tightly to her chest. At that moment, heavy footsteps sounded at the door of the laboratory. The head of the student disciplinary committee entered with two on-duty teachers, pushing the door open. I hear a high-value experimental device went missing here? The disciplinary head strode into the classroom with a pale face. Everyone stay perfectly still. The teachers will check you one by one. Under the close supervision of the teacher, the whole class placed their backpacks on the desks for inspection. When the inspection reached Elena's private storage cabinet, the teacher pulled out a red handbag from the bottom layer of her cabinet that was originally Chloe's bag used for personal items, which they had temporarily put here during the recent cleanup. The teacher unzipped the handbag and reached inside, then suddenly ripped out a heavy metallic component. The core lens of a high-precision microscope glowed with a cold light under the laboratory's fluorescent lights. This isn't mine. This is from Chloe's handbag. Elena screamed, face pale as paper. Elena! You lie through your teeth. You clearly shoved it into my bag while I wasn't paying attention. Chloe panicked completely, pointing at Elena and cursing. Teacher! She stole school property. She's trying to frame the protagonist. And it backfired. Teacher! I didn't do it. It was Chloe who instructed me to do it. Elena lunged at Chloe, tugging her hair. The two of them rolled and wrestled again in the laboratory in front of the disciplinary head and the entire class. The disciplinary head's face turned green with anger, and he slammed the podium. Enough! Theft of valuable school property and framing a fellow student. You two, immediately come with me to the police office to cooperate with the investigation and monitoring. As the students watched with disgust and shock, Chloe and Elena were forcibly escorted away by the teachers like two stray dogs. I quietly packed up my backpack, zipped it closed, shouldered it, and walked out of the science building into the setting sun. Because of theft of school property and their vicious frame-up, Chloe and Elena were given serious disciplinary actions, a 1-week suspension from school and a formal demerit. Having lost all positions and funding qualifications, and being shunned by the entire school, Elena's days back on campus became extremely difficult. Most devastatingly, I completely cut off the extra, refined lunches I had supplied for 2 consecutive years. After losing the 3 daily meals prepared by our family's top chef and the special organic fruit, Elena's once pampered and picky stomach could not adapt to a barren life. She not only lost the social capital of high-grade stationery, but even the most basic nutrition could no longer keep up. Extreme hypoglycemia and hunger left her spirit deteriorating day by day. She originally detested my charitable kindness, in the previous life even privately insulting me several times for humiliating her dignity with expensive meals. But when this charity truly disappeared, she realized with horror that she had grown accustomed to this freeloading life. After losing me, the money tree, she not only could not lift her head in front of the whole school, but also could not report to the private interests binding Chloe. Tuesday noon, the school cafeteria was crowded and chaotic. I carried my insulated lunchbox, sat by the window, and quietly enjoyed the pan-seared salmon and shrimp salad. Not far away, Elena was bowing her head, pale-faced, waiting in line at the cheapest vegetarian window. Her hands trembled violently from the hypoglycemia, eyes rolled back, eye sockets sunken, the whole person exuding an extreme sense of hunger and agitated decay. She got the cheapest meal, a few pieces of boiled vegetables and a hard steamed bun. When she saw the fragrant braised pork on the neighbor's plate, she swallowed hard, and her gaze showed almost paranoid envy and fear. Just as she carried her tray to find a seat, her footing slipped, and she fainted from severe hypoglycemia. Bang! Elena, out of control, bumped into a taller senior boy who was carrying a full plate of hot soup and steak. The plates crashed to the ground, soup splashed, and the dishes shattered. Watch where you're walking! The boy jumped back, furious at being burnt. If this had happened before, Elena would have put on a pitiful look and apologized. But now, tormented by hunger and fear for a whole week, her mind collapsed completely. Looking at the steak on the floor, Elena's eyes swelled red. In front of hundreds of students and staff shocked by the spectacle, she disregarded everything and crouched down, stretched out dirty fingers, and grabbed the steak from the ground, dust and soup splattered, and stuffed it into her mouth. My food! This is mine! Why aren't you giving me food? Elena screamed, her voice hysterical and piercing. What the hell are you doing? This is something from the floor. The surrounding students screamed in fear and stepped back as if facing a madwoman. Elena, stuffing meat into her mouth voraciously, shot a poisonous, wild gaze through the crowd and fixed it on me sitting by the window. "Everything's your fault. You're the protagonist. You ruined me," Elena yelled, her mouth full of oil and dirt, pointing at me. "You used to bring me meals every day. Why don't you bring them now? You're used to feeding me, but now you want to starve me. You vicious woman. What saint are you pretending to be?" The entire dining hall fell into dead silence. All eyes were on Elena's distorted, ugly face, then slowly shifted to me. I coolly, with a napkin wiped around my mouth, stood up. I didn't utter a single slur, nor did I show any anger, only a look as cold as looking at trash. As I gazed down at Elena, writhing and raging on the floor. "Elena," my voice was clear and calm, ringing clearly in the quiet cafeteria. "My kindness is my choice, not your insatiable capital to claim. When you eat my meals while envying my kindness, you should think of today." Elena looked at my clean and neat school uniform and your unwavering eyes, and the fear in her heart finally peaked. She realized that no matter how much she morally coerced or went mad, I would never look at her again. After the cafeteria incident drove Elena to madness, she became the school's laughingstock. But she clearly did not give up the last lifeline, the annual Special Dean's Scholarship at the school. This is the largest scholarship amount, not only awarding $5,000, but more importantly it comes with a direct recommendation form for provincial-level outstanding students. In order to obtain this money and save her desperate campus life, Elena even persuaded Chloe, who had just finished a suspension and returned to school. Chloe, to make amends, forcefully leveraged the remaining connections to push Elena onto the public defense stage. Friday afternoon, the school auditorium was packed. The dean's office director and school leaders sat in the front row judging seats, and a huge banner hung above the stage. Public defense for the senior year 3rd grade special prize scholarship. The defense order was drawn by lot. Elena was second from last, and I was last. Elena appeared in an old, washed out, even somewhat tattered school uniform. Her face was wan and her eyes timid. At the first moment she stepped on stage, she bowed deeply, her voice trembling just right. "Leaders, teachers, and fellow students, I am Elena. Although my family is poor, I have never given up my thirst for learning." She began tearfully recounting how she persisted in studying under difficult circumstances, even producing a poverty certificate stamped by the township, and a so-called volunteer service hours statistic. Several younger students in the audience, unaware of the truth, started whispering among themselves, showing a trace of pity. "I know I made some mistakes before, but all my motivation has been to stay in school to study." Elena wiped her tears and bowed deeply to the judging seats. "Please give me a chance to reform. This scholarship is money that could save me." Chloe sat in the second row, leading the applause vigorously, attempting to inflame the on-site emotions. A few veteran teachers on the judging panel wore hesitant expressions. Just as the chief judge was about to raise the scorecard, I slowly stood up from the prep area. "Wait a moment," I said, holding a white file bag, and walked steadily onto the podium along the steps. Elena saw me come up and her face instantly turned pale. Instinctively she tried to pull back the materials on the podium. "Protagonist, this is my defense time. Why are you up here?" "Because I am the legitimate competitor for this scholarship, and I am the interrogator for this defense." I walked to the other side of the podium, picked up the microphone, and let my voice ring clear and strong, instantly quieting the surrounding murmurs. I opened the file bag, pulled out a thick printed ledger and several clear second-hand platform transaction screenshots, and projected them onto the big screen. A huge display clearly showed a homepage of a resale account named Little Sunshine. Elena just mentioned that she donated all social contributions and the aid materials issued by the school for her study and life, I said, pointing to the screen, my tone cold and precise. "But please look at this account. In the past 2 years, under the guise of brand new and unopened, this account has resold no fewer than 46 aid materials, including high-end down jackets donated by sponsor companies, branded running shoes, and a full set of imported study supplies." The entire venue was in an uproar. The serial numbers of these aided materials are exactly the same as the records issued by the school's aid office to Elena. I turned to the second page, revealing the financial flow. Over 2 years, she illegally profited thousands of dollars by reselling aided materials. And all these funds flowed to luxury beauty salons and private luxury buyers outside the campus. Elena's face turned as pale as paper, her hands and feet ice cold as she stood on the stage, her lips twitching but unable to utter a single sound. As for the duration of social public welfare service she just displayed, I turned around and held up the last page of the document to the judges. This is the stamped proof I obtained directly from the welfare home I claim to have served for. The welfare home clearly states that Elena had only been there once, and was expelled on the spot for secretly taking cash from the welfare fundraiser box. Its stamped form was entirely forged with a fake seal. You are lying through your teeth. This is an invasion of privacy. It's a fabrication. Elena screamed, rushing forward in a frenzy to seize my proof document. I sidestepped slightly. Elena missed the grab, and she clumsily bumped into the podium. The director of the academic affairs office suddenly stood up, his face turning pale, pointing at the podium. Enough! Elena! The director strode onto the podium, taking the verification letter and the transaction records from my hand. The more he looked, the worse his expression became. Falsifying a poverty verification, reselling aided materials for profit, forging official seals. The director's voice echoed through the auditorium as he spoke into the microphone. Elena, you have not only completely forfeited your eligibility for the scholarship, but your actions have also seriously violated school rules and regulations. Director, I was wrong. It was Chloe who helped me make the fake proof. She taught me to resell it. Elena, in utter desperation, turned against Chloe again, pointing at the podium and screaming wildly. Chloe, sitting below, turned pale with fright, stood up to flee the auditorium, but she was stopped at the door by the on-duty security personnel. Take them all to the academic affairs office. The director waved his hand and gave the order. Amid the collective sneers and furious curses of the whole school, Elena was dragged off the podium by security. Her scholarship eligibility was permanently cancelled, and the act of forging official documents was directly recorded in the school disciplinary archives, following her for the rest of her life. I stood quietly in the center of the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled as I began my first-place defense speech. On the eve of the practice exam, the atmosphere across the entire senior year reached an extreme level of tension. This was the last full-scale mock exam before the Gaokao, and the results would directly determine the final list for recommended admission and sprint efforts. After consecutive blows, Chloe and Elena had completely become marginal figures in the class. However, on the night before the mock exam, I inadvertently noticed Chloe frequently running to the proctor's office, a trace of vicious sharpness flashing in her eyes. The exam on the morning of the test day was a physics special session. 3 minutes before it started, the proctor distributed the papers. The whole hall was silent except for the rustling of pages. I was about to write when the proctor at the podium suddenly stopped and gazed coldly in my direction. Main character. The proctor's voice rang out, instantly breaking the quiet of the exam hall. Please stand up. The whole class lifted their heads. Chloe sat not far away, a malicious cold smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Teacher, what's going on? I stood up calmly. The proctor strode to my desk, pulled open the drawer of my desk, and drew out a thick black notebook from inside, slamming it onto the podium. The mock exam is strictly aligned with Gaokao standards. Why is there a revision notebook inside your drawer that contains the core formulas and question type summaries for this exam? You are openly cheating. The hall erupted in an uproar. My God, the main character brought notes into the exam? Impossible. Her grades are so good. Chloe immediately stood up and shouted, Teacher! I saw her memorizing this notebook during morning self-study. She just tried to stuff the notebook deeper into the drawer. As the former class monitor, I demand to cancel her chance for all subjects. Elena chimed in. Yes, I saw it too. She also tried to block the drawer with a test paper. Faced with this sudden accusation, I remained calm and unruffled. Teacher, I looked at the notebook on the podium, my voice steady as water. May I ask if the handwriting on this notebook is mine? The proctor hesitated, then opened the notebook and glanced at it. The whole thing is your original logical diagrams and formula derivations, and the handwriting is also your style. Do you still want to deny it? I let out a light chuckle, casually picking up the whiteboard marker from the podium and quickly writing 2 lines of formulas on the board, then turned to the proctor. Teacher, please compare carefully. I pointed at the board and at the notebook on the desk. This notebook is indeed mine, but it had been lost in the classroom 3 days ago. More importantly, please turn to pages 12 and 15. The proctor frowned and opened the notebook. On page 12, in the free body diagram, there is an extremely concealed computational error. On page 15, the momentum conservation formula has a purposely written wrong subscript symbol. I spoke each word clearly. This notebook is a phishing trap I prepared. If someone stole it and copied it, their draft would surely bear these 2 identical errors. Chloe's face went pale at the words wrong subscript. Teacher, since Chloe and Elena swore that they saw me cheating, I turned my head, eyes like blades shooting toward Chloe. Why not check Chloe's draft paper right now? The proctor's gaze shifted and he immediately went to Chloe's desk and snatched away her draft paper. On the draft paper, there was indeed a red ink version of the exact same derivation as in that notebook, with even the page 12 computational error and the wrongly written subscript on page 15 identical down to the last detail. This isn't possible. Chloe trembled violently, her face as pale as a dead person. I just happened to miscalculate. Do you think mistakes can make even the strokes of the symbols identical? I looked at her coldly. You stole my notes, pulled an all-nighter cramming before the exam, even tried to stuff the notes into my drawer at the start of the test to frame me for cheating, and yet you wrote the evidence of your plagiarism completely on your own draft paper. The invigilator was furious, slamming the podium hard. Chloe, stealing someone else's study materials, attempting to frame others. Serious cheating. You are utterly audacious. Teacher, it wasn't me. It was Elena. She helped me stuff the notes into the main character's drawer. Chloe collapsed, pointing at Elena and screaming hysterically. Chloe, you lie through your teeth. It was you who threatened my living allowance this week to make me do it. Elena cried fearfully as well, and the 2 of them debated in the exam hall once more. Enough. Cancel the full marks for this mock exam across all subjects. Expulsion-worthy punishment, directly referred to the school disciplinary committee for expulsion. The invigilator yelled sternly, and the 2 were driven out of the exam hall. After the simulated exam collapsed completely, Chloe and Elena were ordered to suspend classes to cooperate with the disciplinary committee's review. Under the shadow of severe punishment for expulsion, the previously unassailable defenses between them completely crumbled. On Monday morning, the school disciplinary committee held the final hearing in the administration building. The principal, the academic affairs director, the grade-level leaders, and the parents invited to attend were all present. 10 minutes before the hearing began, Chloe and Elena were arranged to wait in the student council office for questioning. As I passed by the office door, I casually slid a pre-prepared document into the mailbox under the door, an investigation draft about who actually orchestrated multiple plots against a fellow student. The draft clearly stated, if one party could provide definitive evidence of the other party's mastermind, they could apply to reduce the punishment to being placed on probation at the school, while the mastermind would be permanently expelled and recorded in the files. This bomb in the mailbox became the final straw that toppled the fragile trust between them. Sharp arguing bursts quickly spread from the office. Chloe, don't think you can push all the blame onto me. Elena's hysterical scream pierced through the wooden door. From buying fancy stationery online at the start, to tampering with the physics competition registration form, to stealing microscope lenses, was any of that not your instruction? You want me to cover for you and get expelled? Dream on. Don't you go making baseless accusations here. Chloe shouted, slamming the table in anger. If it weren't for your own greed and freeloading off the main character's lunch, and then trying to use fake documents to win scholarships, would I have helped you behind the scenes? You dragged me down step by step. You're a complete lying scoundrel. I'm the liar? Elena screamed, with the chair being forcefully toppled in the background. Who took the principal's spare key to the archives? Who bribed the proctor the day before the exam to change the grading time? I have all our chat recordings and transfer records right here. You dare to secretly record? Chloe completely lost control and grabbed Elena by the hair. The two of them frantically twisted and tore at each other in the office, breaking teacups on the desk. The sound of chairs and tables crashing to the ground deafening. Squeak, the door to the student council office was flung open. The principal, the academic affairs director, and the parents on both sides stood in the doorway, dumbfounded by the ugly scene before them. Chloe's hair was matted, her face bearing several fresh scratches. Elena's clothes were torn, and she was still gripping a section of Chloe's bracelet in her hand. Stop it! This is obscene behavior. Chloe's father, furious and trembling, stepped forward and slapped Chloe in the face. Elena's mother sank to the floor, slapping her thighs and wailing, calling for disaster at home. Principal, teacher, I have evidence. Elena, ignoring the bleeding cheek, frantically pulled her phone from her bag and flopped at the principal's feet. This is all Chloe's doing. She's jealous of my better grades and the teacher's favor, so she forced me to join in. All the perpetration steps and transfer records are on my phone. You dirty thing. Chloe, seeing this, sprang at the phone, and the two of them rolled onto the floor again, punching and tearing at each other in front of the school's core leadership, exposing all the private misconduct, plagiarism, cheating, and vicious scheming that had been lurking behind the scenes. The principal's face turned ashen, almost dripping with sweat, and he slammed the doorframe with a hard thud. Enough! Everyone, into the hearing hall now. The hearing was held in the most solemn large conference room of the whole school. On one side of the long table sat the school leaders, the head of the academic affairs office, all the teachers of the school discipline committee, and invited parent representatives. On the other side were Chloe, who looked ashen-faced, and Elena, who had red-rimmed eyes, trembling all over. I sat upright in the witness chair as the victim and the first witness, with a heavy file of evidence placed before me. The hearing will now begin. The principal struck the gavel, and his voice echoed in the empty hall, carrying undeniable authority. Regarding the cases of Chloe and Elena, students of Class 3-3, accused of multiple serious disciplinary violations, forging documents, stealing school property, and slandering a classmate, please have the Academic Affairs Office present the investigation results. The head of the Academic Affairs Office stood up, opened the large screen, and displayed a series of clear evidentiary graphs before everyone. In the past few weeks, the Academic Affairs Office, in cooperation with the Discipline Inspection Team, conducted a thorough investigation. The head spoke solemnly. First, on fraud related to student aid and the forging of documents. Upon verification, Elena has been repeatedly converting national nutrition subsidies into high-end luxury stationery, and she has privately affixed the Community Welfare Center seal to forge service hours, the nature of which is extremely malicious. Elena's mother sat in the spectator seats covering her face and sobbing, while Elena pressed her lips tightly, not daring to lift her head. Second, on stealing advanced laboratory equipment and intending to frame others. The head of the Academic Affairs Office invoked the surveillance logs from the science building. Chloe used her position as class monitor to secretly take the keys, and together with Elena transferred the core components of the microscope. More, the head pointed to the comparison chart on the screen between transaction records and exam drafts. On the eve of the second mock exam, Chloe secretly entered the archive room to tamper with grades and stole the study notes of the main protagonist classmate, attempting to ruin the fellow student's future by making a false accusation in the exam. All of the above acts are supported by surveillance videos, system logs, paper ledgers, and the audio of communications provided by Elena. The facts are clear and the evidence conclusive. Teacher, I know I'm wrong. Please give me another chance. Chloe completely collapsed, suddenly stood up, bowed to the principal and the teachers in public, and begged, I'm making my first mistake. I'm about to take the college entrance exam. If I am recorded in the file, my whole life will be ruined. Chloe's father also stood up hurriedly, a forced smile on his face, presenting documents. Principal, we are willing to bear all the school's losses and also willing to provide enormous compensation to the main protagonist student. The child is still young, confused for a moment. Please show mercy and do not expel her. Sitting on the witness chair, I slowly raised my head, my eyes calm, without a trace of warmth. When you took my notes, altered my competition registration form, and even attempted to frame me with the crime of theft so that I would bear a lifelong stain, my voice was cold and firm, resounding through the entire conference room. Have you ever thought that I am about to take the college entrance exam too? Have you ever thought that my life might be ruined by you? Chloe's screams stopped abruptly, her lips trembling violently, unable to utter a word in reply. The principal looked at them with an expressionless gaze, then slowly picked up the disciplinary decision letter on the table. According to the National Regulations on Student Status Management for Secondary Vocational and Regular High School Students, and Article 17 of this school's rules, the principal's voice was deep and carried absolute decisiveness. After the unanimous approval of the school board and the discipline committee, the following final dispositions are issued. The principal stood up and read aloud sternly. First, expel Chloe and Elena from the school. Effective immediately. Revoke all honors and point accumulation qualifications they have earned during their time at school. Second, regarding the forging of documents and the theft of valuable school property, the school has formally submitted to the judicial authorities and the admissions office the report of violations, to be recorded directly into their personal integrity files. No! Elena screamed, collapsing to the floor in a faint, while Chloe seemed to have drained all the strength from her body, slumping in the chair, her eyes vacant as she stared at the ceiling, tears streaming down unchecked. Security personnel quickly entered the hall and forcibly escorted the two people who had completely lost their college entrance qualifications and future away from the hearing. On the last day before the college entrance examination, the corridors of the senior year were filled with flying test papers and shredded scraps. The air was thick with pre-exam restlessness, a liveliness that had nothing to do with the two people standing at the side door of the school gate. As I stepped out of the campus, two gaunt, desolate figures suddenly dashed from the shadows and blocked my way. It was Chloe and Elena. Only a few weeks had passed, yet they seemed to have aged by 10 years. Chloe's once delicate hair was messily tied at the back, eye sockets sunken, and her branded clothes were creased all over. Elena's already emaciated cheeks were even more hollowed, and her eyes were filled with despair. With bloodshot gaze so piercing she dared not lift her head to meet the stares of passers-by. "Heroin!" Chloe clumsily exclaimed with a plop, kneeling hard on the cement not far from me, in front of all the teachers and students coming and going. The surrounding seniors preparing to leave school stopped, forming a circle, pointing and taking photos with their phones. "Heroin, please. Save me." Chloe tugged at my dress, tears and snot streaming down, voice hoarse beyond repair. The disciplinary notice from the Student Disciplinary Committee has already been sent to the Provincial Admissions Office. I've been stripped of all qualifications to take this year's exams, not even eligible to re-enroll. My father kicked me out of the house. I'm really at the end of my rope. Elena also knelt down, crawled forward, and reached out to grab my shoes, her voice trembly as she begged, "Heroin. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I was the one who didn't know better. I envied you. I shouldn't have eaten your food and harmed you. Please tell the principal to plead for mercy, to revoke that dismissal. Even a warning staying on campus so I can take next year's college entrance exams would be fine." I slowed my steps, gently drew back my foot, and retreated a step, looking down at these two executioners who had once pushed me into the abyss in my previous life, with a superior gaze. "Chloe, Elena." My voice was incredibly calm, without any sarcasm or a trace of anger, as if I were looking at two strangers completely irrelevant to me. "Is everything you're facing today something I forced you to do?" Chloe opened her mouth, the muscles on her face convulsing violently. "Did I force you to steal my notes in the exam?" I looked down at her. "Did I force you to take the key and break into the archives to modify documents?" I turned to Elena again. "Did I force you to take national relief funds to buy luxury stationery? Did I force you to forge the Welfare Institute's seal to cheat the scholarship?" The two women were speechless, slumped on the ground, trembling violently. "All of your fates today are simply you paying for the bad deeds you sowed in the past." I adjusted the strap of my backpack, my tone as cold as frost. "You reap what you sow. Do you want me to plead for you? On what grounds would you think I would forgive a villain who nearly ruined my life? We know we're wrong. Why can't you be magnanimous?" Chloe, unable to plead, lost control again, screaming at me, You obviously lost nothing. You're still the top of the class. You have everything. Why can't you leave us a way out? Magnanimous? I scoffed coldly, my gaze like a blade slicing across her face. Do not urge others to be good before you understand another's suffering. I didn't take you down in the hearing. That already reflects my greatest kindness. As for a way out, the moment you chose to harm others, you yourself cut off your own path. At this moment, 2 campus security guards hurried over with batons, one on each side, pinning the hysterical Chloe and the limp Elena to the ground. Move, move, move! Don't make trouble at the school gate. It disrupts the college entrance exam order. The security guards shoved them outside the campus. Chloe struggled, letting out a piercing scream. Elena, as if deprived of her soul, gazed at the ground with vacant eyes, letting the mud stain her knees. In early July, the provincial admissions office and the high school entrance exam results query system opened simultaneously. In front of the school's huge electronic display, crowds of senior year graduates and their parents gathered to view the results. The scorching sun cast a glow on the playground, making the characters' good news of the senior year Gaokao shine brilliantly. Amid the bursts of exclamations and applause from the crowd, the Dean of Academic Affairs personally pasted the red background gold letter list onto the central publicity board. The top provincial Gaokao scorer for the senior year and the top overall score in science across the province. Me, 718 points. Top scorer. Our school produced the provincial top scorer. The crowd erupted in applause, teachers wore bright smiles, and surrounding students clustered around to show me admiration and congratulations. Yet at the bottom of the publicity board, the disciplinary notice column still displayed 2 black and white printed expulsion notices. The names Chloe and Elena had long since become the negative exemplars of the entire campus and even city's high schools. Rumor had it that Chloe, having been expelled and losing her Gaokao qualification, had her family business severely affected by a breach of trust, and was eventually sent by her father to a closed vocational school in a remote area. Elena, for forging official documents and misappropriating student aid funds, lost all support and faced enormous compensation, sinking completely to the bottom rungs of society as an unemployed person, eking out a living through day labor and debt on the streets. 2 weeks later, the school's 100-day Pledge Achievements exhibition and the Outstanding Graduates Award ceremony was held grandly in the school's auditorium. I wore clean, neat school uniform, stepping up onto the lectern covered with red carpet under the gaze of thousands of teachers, students, and media from all walks of life. The principal personally handed me the Golden Crown Medal, a symbol of the highest honor, along with a hefty scholarship. The spotlights shone on me, countless shutter clicks rang out, and the dazzling light enveloped me. I griped the microphone, looked at the young, vigorous, upward-facing faces below, and clearly and forcefully delivered my graduation remarks. What truly decides our fate is never someone else's charity, nor malicious scheming, but our own bottom line and courage when facing choices. May we all seize the initiative in our lives and forge ahead. The audience's applause surged like a tide. I tilted my head slightly, facing the blinding yet warm light, and completely bid farewell to all the shadows and nightmares of my past, stepping toward my own brilliant future.